All right, we're going to get started here in the demo den. If you've got a few minutes, we'd ask you to come on over and hear what it is we have to share. All right, we're going to kick it off. I've got 5 minutes. My partner has 5 minutes, and then we want to leave 5 minutes for questions. And who we are and what we represent. We are Zencity, and what we do is we measure success. And how we do that is we measure public perception, how much trust your residents have in your agency, and how comfortable they feel in their own neighborhoods, how safe. So we're all used to looking at metrics in law enforcement. The metrics we've been looking at for our careers have to some extent failed us. You look at places where they talk about defunding or places where we have trouble recruiting, retaining. But here, we take your census data, we look at it 24/7, 365, and we give you input from your residents. Not just the loudest voice in the room, but all the residents. And one of the great things that we like about the technology is it allows sheriffs to do a public announcement, a public rollout like we've done in Orange County and Harris County, where the sheriff acknowledges to the community, look, your voice is important to us. We're investing in technology to make sure you're heard. And what does that accomplish? Accomplishes a couple things. Make sure that there's alignment between your agency and the community you serve. For too many years as a profession, and I was a chief in 4 different states, for too many years as a profession, we've decided amongst ourselves what was most important to our community. Then we opened it up to community meetings, and we get a handful of people that represent an agenda. Oftentimes, they're the loudest voice in the room, but they don't speak for the community. What you'll have shown to you here in just a minute is the dashboard that allows you to tap into that other 99% of your community. As a chief in Grand Rapids, I learned quite a bit about my community using this platform. There were neighborhoods that I thought we had great relationships with because we were always there. And what I heard from them once we used the technology is, you're always here, but you're always here for law enforcement purposes. You're here executing a warrant, effecting an arrest, responding to a disturbance. They basically felt over-policed and under-engaged. Our initial scores when we looked at that neighborhood were in the 30s as far as trust and safety. Other parts of the city were in the 70s, some broaching 80th percentile. What we then did over the course of the summer was worked in that Baxter neighborhood to bring those numbers up. Basically, by doing all the things that your agency is already doing, but we were able to do them with surgical precision. Instead of guessing where the sheriff's presence might have the most impact, or instead of trying to guess what community meeting to attend, where to deploy your folks, where you need to be on bicycle, where you want to put your motors, all of those things we were able to do in neighborhoods that felt like they weren't being heard. And this wasn't just a scientific exercise. We were able to see the scores increase. We were able to hear from residents when we had a critical incident that they felt that they had enough trust in our organization to go through that critical incident side by side with us. Also helped us internally with morale. You'll get a live feed of comments from your residents. And inevitably, I'm telling you what you know here, the community supports us much, much greater than the media would have you believe. So we logged on every day in Grand Rapids at roll call. We looked at the comments. We made sure we were aligned in terms of priorities, made sure we recognized issues before they became problems, and then made sure that we recognized the officers, the deputies, the men and women in uniform who are knocking it out of the park every day. One of the other nice things is when someone would attend a commission meeting with an agenda, it was nice to be able to share with city or county commissioners, look, I don't want to discount the voice in the room, but what they're saying represents the voice of one. What we have here is empirical data that represents the voice of the community that's helping drive our decision making, that's helping drive our performance management as we look at which areas are performing best in our department, which areas are lagging, where we need to use our limited resources. So that's a lot to say about a technology. So now I want to explain to you a little bit about how that's done and what that looks like. So I'm going to introduce my partner, Bar, and let him take it from here.
Thanks, Chief. Hi, my name is Bar. Yes, that's my full name. It's where hopefully we'll meet a few of you afterwards to hang out for a couple of minutes and not talk shop, because I know it's been a long day. I started my career off in the Israeli military, leading crisis comms and public affairs. And one of the things that I noticed was there was a lot of chatter happening in different communities. And when I moved into the tech side of things and moved into working with the public sector for the past almost 10 years, there seems to be a certain trend, to Chief's point. We hear from the same voices over and over again, and that sort of becomes our compass. But what if we could adapt the way we're listening to our community to the 21st century? What if I could literally reach my community where they spend 2 to 4 hours a day on a monthly basis all the time? And I could gauge what their perception is, to Chief's point, around the perception of trust and safety, and be able to actually see what they think around things like approachability, fairness, and respect. But that's very high level. Ultimately, what we're doing is we're serving digital advertising across all your community to reach everybody, not just a small group of people. And because we're constantly pumping out the ads, and it doesn't matter if you're spending time on Facebook or Instagram or Candy Crush, we're going to be able to reach you. And because of that, we can then start collecting information on not only where you're anonymously located, but we can target it around specific topics. So I can see, for example, whether there's a certain issue that's popping up within a certain district, right? So if I've got 7, 8, 12 patrol districts, I want to be able to understand what each one thinks about a certain topic. And so what I can actually see is, hey, if I ask you today, what is the #1 issue in your neighborhood? You can give me that answer, and what I can actually do is, I can then be able to show you that over time, certain things are not as they're perceived. If we look at the news or if we look at social media, a lot of times certain issues tend to be the headlines. But if we drill down into the information and the data from our residents, we can actually see that, you know what? Streets and traffic is actually the #1 issue. And it's not only the #1 issue, but it's really a quarter of, and everything else is really not as important. But what if we could take it one step deeper? What if we could actually ask people, hey, what's bothering you in your area? Give me a little bit more context. So we get 911 calls, right? Or when people are really upset, they will let us know their opinion. But what about everything in the middle? How do we measure that? Well, that's where this comes in. We can tell you at any given point what's trending in your community, and we can quantify it. So it's not just about telling you that streets and traffic or crime or burglary is a top issue, but by how much. And from San Diego to Chicago to Orange County Sheriff in Texas to Florida to Harris County Sheriffs in Texas and even all the way to the London Met, we've been able to show all these agencies what is top of mind for their community and what is actually a pervasive issue that needs to be dealt with versus what is just a blip on the radar and just a bunch of chatter. And I'll show you here, as you can see on the platform, this is live. So this is coming in from yesterday from, this is Orange County in Florida. And you can see what is the #1 issue or problem in your local area that you would like the sheriff's office to deal with. What is the name of the place where this is happening? Because a lot of times we get complaints, but we don't really know how to point our finger on it. Do we deploy a certain patrol to this area at a certain time? Well, now you can. In the UK, they call it antisocial behavior. It's not as much of a common term in the US, but a lot of these issues that are bubbling up in our community, we can finally have a way of measuring them, understanding them, and doing something about them. The last thing I'll say is that we make this easy. We design, we deploy, and we analyze everything for you so that there's no heavy lifting. Sheriff's offices already have enough things to deal with. They don't need another platform that they then have to hire for more staff to deal with. We'll take care of all of that.
What I want to do is, for the handful of you who are close enough, is answer any questions you may have. But I want to close with just this thought. I think the metrics that we've used to measure success as sheriffs and police chiefs have not only not served the community well, but they've not served the profession well. You've got people wearing uniforms who couldn't tell you if Part 1 crimes were up 3% or down 3%, yet alone a resident. But every resident can tell you whether they trust your agency and whether they feel safe in their neighborhood. Those are the metrics that matter to your residents. Can they put the dog on a leash at 3 o'clock in the morning and walk around the corner without hearing gunshots and being afraid? If they get pulled over by a deputy sheriff, are they nervous that they're not going to have an opportunity to be heard and that they're going to be treated unfairly? This measures that. It measures it in real time, measures it in numbers that match your census data, and measures it in a way that you can improve performance and improve morale. So we appreciate those of you within listening distance of our voice and open it up to any questions anyone may have. Sir. Question was cost. So I'm going to defer to the smarter of the two of us for the cost question. Here's what I will say. So as a chief in Grand Rapids, cost was an issue. So to their credit, Zencity was looking more for strategic partners because they're very mission driven. So I told them what I could afford under my threshold, and they made it work for me. So Bar, if you want to reference how it's population based or sworn.
It ultimately comes down to the population size because that impacts the data that we collect. So it can range, from anywhere from 30,000 really and all the way to much more, depending on the size of the agency.
So I had 250,000 residents, and when I took the first year I paid for it out of drug fund because I didn't want to have to go in front of city commission and explain what it was I was doing. After sharing this data in community meetings, sharing it with city commission, putting it in my annual report, and sharing it with media, the next year I went in front of commission, and it was a no-brainer. I mean, for considering what our budget is, what we spend, the amount that we actually spend to hear from the 99% of our residents who don't have 2 hours to come to a community meeting in an evening because they've got a life to live, kids to get ready for bed, and work to be at the next morning. This lets you hear from them. Yes, sir. Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was, based on our population, what percentage of people took the survey? So a couple things. One is, once people click on the survey, the completion rate is about 80%. The other thing is we were very motivated to make sure the community knew a couple things. One, that this was legitimate and it was from us. So we held a press conference, and we've done it in Orange County, we've done it in Los Angeles, we've done it in the London Met. So residents know this is you reaching out to them. Accomplishes a couple things. They recognize the legitimacy of the product. Secondly is it's a win-win. Even our detractors have to acknowledge that investing in technology to hear from the populace who doesn't generally have a voice, or for people who feel underserved, is a good investment.
And to answer that question even with a little bit more in depth, ultimately what you want to get to is a representative sample of everyone. And that's what we're doing. Now, the best part about it, when you compare it to traditional survey methodology, is that with traditional surveys, you send out mailers, or you try and reach people by phone through an anonymous number. How many people answer that kind of number? Let's be real. And then with the mailers, you're asking somebody to grab a pen, sit down, and fill those out. Here, you're in and out in 3 minutes or less. And so as a result of that, we reach, I'll give you an example from like LA, thousands on a monthly basis. London is almost 10,000 per month. And so we make sure that it not only mirrors the community, but it's also statistically significant in the sense that we're getting a large enough sample so you can trust the amount and the quality of the data.
I will say, so Zencity's got about 300 partners, not including those overseas. I think that we will reach a point in our profession where those questions will be the norm. People won't be asking as much, is crime up or down, clearance rate up or down? They're going to be asking, do the residents feel safer this year than they did last year? And do they have confidence in your organization? I think it's a game changer. It was for us in Grand Rapids, and I think it can be for you as well. I want to thank you for your time. We've gone about the 18 minutes we had allotted. We are in booth 607. So if you'd like to come by, we'd love to give you a demo as to what it would look like in your jurisdiction, and we can even talk a little bit of details regarding price and such. So thank you, much appreciated.